Hi and welcome back to The Books Are Everywhere. So today I have my June wrap up. In June I took part in the Whatever-a-thon, which was hosted by Maddie from Book Browsing Blog, and I loved it. It really pushed me to read outside of my comfort zone, things I might not necessarily have read in June. And yeah, just read a lot. It pushed me to read a lot, so it was really cool to take part in that. If you want to see how I got on week by week, I did do weekly reading vlogs for the whole of June, so you can check those out on my channel. I will link my playlist to my vlogs down below. But here's the big thing, I read 24 books in June. That is more than I've ever read in a month. Now 5 of those were graphic novels, but still, I'm really impressed with myself. 24 books and 19 novels is pretty good going in my opinion. So I have a lot to get through today with you. I don't know how I'm going to do this because I don't want this to be a super long video. So I'm probably going to just talk about these books sometimes together if they're part of a series and things like that to try and hurry this along a bit. I will also be telling you what prompt I read these for. I didn't read every single book for a prompt necessarily. I made a TBR video, which I will also link down below, which had a book for every single prompt. And then I wanted to get through those, and I also had some other commitments, so I ended up reading kind of outside that as well. I did log all of my books as part of Whatever-a-thon, but I won't tell you the prompt for every single one. I'll just tell you the one that I originally picked, if that makes sense. So I picked one, like a separate book for each of the 15 prompts, and then others I read I just counted towards it and found some prompts that fit so I could log them as part of Whatever-you-want-a-thon. Anyway, without further ado, I am going to try and do this in some kind of order. Some of these I started on the same day, or if they're part of a series I'll just talk about them together even if I read them over a longer period of time. So I'm just going to go in kind of an order of when I started the first book, and then talk about the series as a whole in that segment, if that makes sense. So let's just dive into it and start talking about what I read in June. So the first one I read was The Maidens by Alex Michaelides, and I really enjoyed this one. This is a thriller by the same author as The Silent Patient, but the twist with this one is that it's Greek mythology inspired, and this follows Mariana, who is a group therapist living in London who has gone through some real tough times herself, and then things start happening at her old university, Cambridge, where she attended and her niece, I think it's her niece now, attends, and people start getting murdered. And Mariana believes she knows who did it. From the very first page of this book, she puts that suspicion out there. And then she goes to Cambridge to try and find out what's going on. And she finds that this Greek tragedy professor has this kind of elite group of students called the Maidens. And she finds that very suspicious and thinks it's linked to the murders and that he is linked to the murders. And this is basically for her finding out whether that's true or not. She's kind of mad herself, but I really enjoyed reading this one. So I gave this one 4 stars. I didn't read this for a specific prompt. I read this because I had it as a proof copy and it came out on June 10th, I think, so I wanted to get it to it before June 10th, so I didn't read this necessarily as part of my TBR, but I still read it in June and really enjoyed it. And then I have the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber. So I read these over the course of, I think, a week or 2 weeks. Me and Alex buddy read the whole series together. I've read the first 2 before and I didn't read the last one, because I really loved Caraval when I read it. When Legendary came out I didn't really enjoy it as much, but I wondered if that was because I'd left such a gap between the 2. So I decided that when I reread them I would reread them all together in a bunch, and Alex wanted to do the same thing. I think she'd only read the first one and never carried on with the series, so we buddy read this over a course of 4 days per book, so 12 days overall. And I really enjoyed the series overall. I did again find Caraval to be my favourite, and I put this down as a 5-star prediction for part of Whatever-you-want-a-thon, which is a bit of a cheat because obviously I did read it before and rated it 5 stars, but it's been a lot of time since I read it the first time and I wasn't entirely sure if I'd feel the same way about it now. If you don't know about this series, it is set around following Scarlett and Donatello, who are sisters, and they live on an island, and They basically have a very sheltered life. Their father is very controlling of them, and they escape to go to Caraval, which is this game that happens once a year. They've wanted to go forever, and basically you go into this game and you don't know what's real, what's happening in the game, what's happening in the outside world. It's a very immersive fantasy world, and I absolutely love the magic of the first one, which I do feel is kind of lost in the other two, because you do kind of know more about the game and how it works, whereas this one is very kind of shocking and you really don't know what's going on. So I rated this one 5 stars, and then I have to find my ratings for the other two. So I rated Caraval 5 stars, and I rated Legendary and Finale 4 stars each, because again I didn't enjoy these quite as much, but I do love the sisters and the strong female characters in this one. And yeah, I do really enjoy this series as a whole, but Caraval is definitely the one that's up there for me. These were all on my original Whatever-a-thon TBR, so for Caraval that was a 5-star prediction, for Legendary it was a buddy read, and I read Finale for the Fit a TBR game prompt, in which I used the continue with the series prompt from the Dart Attack May video on Book Browsing Blogs YouTube channel. So yeah, that is my wrap up of rereading Caraval and finally reading Finale. And then we have the whole of the Heartstopper books up to date. There is going to be one more in this graphic novel collection, but at the moment there is 4 volumes, and I reread the first 3 in order to read the 4th one, which only came out in May, I think. So I thought I would reread these because as they're graphic novels, they are super easy to read, and I love reading them. And one of the prompts was to reread a comfort read, which I thought these would be absolutely perfect for. So yeah, I absolutely love reading these every time I read them. I think I've read the first one 3 or 4 times now, either on Tapas or Tumblr or in person, and yeah, I just love these characters, I love this series. So this follows Nick and Charlie, who are both boys in high school, and they kind of become friends. Charlie is very openly out as gay, but he faced a lot of bullying for it, and he starts falling hard for Nick when they become friends, and it basically leads on from there and follows them throughout their adventures in high school. The third one follows a trip to Paris. So these books follow a lot of difficult discussions, mental health themes, and also they are just really cute and fluffy. They're a really nice balance. The 4th one, I will say, does follow a lot of themes of mental health and eating disorders, and has a stay in a psychiatric hospital. So I will just give a bit of a warning for that, but I do absolutely love these books so much. And I read all of these for different prompts. So as I said, the first 3 I actually read for reread a comfort read, and the 4th one I read for a book that reminds you of a pride flag, because this reminded me of the demisexual flag with the purple on it. So yeah, I decided to read it for that one. I also, of course, gave all of these 5 stars because they're some of my favourite books in the world. And then I read Blackout by various authors. This has 6 different authors: Danielle Clayton, Tiffany D. Jackson, Nick Stone, Angie Thomas, Ashley Woodfolk and Nicola Yoon. And this is a collection of short stories. It's an anthology, and it's set during a New York blackout over the course of an evening, and it follows different characters and how their lives kind of intertwine. I really enjoyed this one, and I really liked all of the short stories and how they kind of intertwine with each other. Some I obviously did enjoy more than others. I think it was Nick Stone's one that I really liked. That was my favourite one overall. Just gonna try and find out. No, it was actually Ashley Woodfolk's one that was my favourite, which was Made to Fit. But I really enjoyed all of these. My only slight disappointment with them is that they didn't intertwine at the end as much as I wanted them to. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars overall. I didn't read this one as part of my Whatever-a-thon TBR. I also had a proof copy, as you can see. This one came out on the 24th of June, and I would highly recommend going to pick it up. I then read Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This one was a very mixed bag for me. I just found that I liked some of the scenes a lot and I wanted to rate it 5 stars, and then some of the other scenes I just completely blanked on, didn't really enjoy reading them, wasn't taking in what was happening. It was really weird, very up and down. I loved the gothic feel of this, and I loved the setting of it a lot, but yeah, I just found the writing very, very up and down. This is slightly strange in that it's not told from the main character's point of view, it's their story as told by a housekeeper to the person who narrates this book, which is very strange. I do really want to watch some adaptations of this to see how it comes across in kind of other stories and other forms of media, because I think it could be really, really beautiful, and I have never seen an adaptation of it, which is kind of cool that I read the book first. But yeah, I enjoyed it, I just didn't like it as much as I wanted to like it. I read this one as part of my challenge to read a classic a month for the rest of the year, as recommended to me by my friends, and also as part of the Wordsworth Collection Edition set that I bought at the start of the year. So my friend Sophie from Mind of a Book Dragon recommended this one to me. So I rated this one 3.5 stars, and I read it for the prompt outside of your comfort zone. So then the next one that I read was The Terrible and Wonderful Reasons Why I Run Long Distances by Matthew Inman, or The Oatmeal as he is better known as, and he wrote the graphic novel Why Your Cat is Plotting to Kill You, or Why I Think Your Cat is Plotting to Kill You, something like that. But yeah, this one I didn't expect to read. I don't own a copy, but I'll put the cover here for you. This one I read because my boyfriend just handed it to me one day and said, I think you should read this at some point. And then he got in the shower and I just sat and read the whole graphic novel. It was a graphic novel kind of comic style thing, so it didn't take me too long to read. It probably took around half an hour. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. It was hilarious, it was really funny, but also really relatable. And as somebody who runs, and this is why my boyfriend handed it to me, because he thought I would find it relatable being a runner myself now, I wouldn't necessarily say I run long distances. I run up to 10k a week and I run one 10k and one 5k a week, but I definitely found this one really, really relatable. I love the art style, I love the comic style of it. So I actually gave that one 5 out of 5 stars. I just really, really enjoyed it. Again, I didn't read it as part of my Whatever-a-thon TBR, but yeah, I really liked it. And then we have one I really didn't expect to read, and that was The Railway Children by E. Nesbit. I kind of screwed up a little bit with this one because it was actually another recommendation for my long-term project for the rest of the year, and that was to read a classic a month recommended to me by a friend. I didn't realise that this was also on the list, but Alex recommended this to me, so I should have waited until July to read it, but I did it, it's fine. Didn't realise until after I'd read it, but I read this one as an audiobook just in a day, I think, or 2 days over a weekend, while driving around the English countryside, and there is not a better way to read this book. I firmly believe that I read this book in the best way because I got the feel of this book so strongly from driving around and looking at the English countryside, and I did a run through the English countryside near my house while reading the end of this book, and I just really, really liked it. This is following a couple of children, their siblings, and they move from London to the countryside because their dad has been kind of taken away. They don't know why. There is a mystery element to this book that I didn't expect, and I just really liked the family element of it, really liked the setting of it, and I found it just really immersive and I really enjoyed it, so I gave this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. So then I read Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry by Joya Goffney. I read this one for the first letter of this book had to start with the same letter that ended the title of the book you just read. So I read Finale. I finished like 3 books on the same day, so I chose to finish Finale and start this one. So that ended in E and started with E, and that's how that worked. But yeah, this one I really, really liked. This follows 2 main characters who are both black, and this was about Quinn Jackson, who had a journal, and she kept loads of lists in her journal for basically everything, and her life was in there, all her deepest, darkest secrets, and then her journal goes missing, and she ends up teaming up with the person who she last saw her journal with to try and find it and like form an unexpected friendship. This one was really, really cute, but also hard-hitting and follows some really kind of deep discussions, which I really, really liked. and I loved Quinn Jackson as a main character. She was really likeable and I really related to her in some ways. So I gave this one 4.5 stars as well. So going from one contemporary to another, I then read Hanny and Issue's Guide to Fake Dating, which I really enjoyed. I read this one as a buddy read with some friends, so it was completely unplanned and I didn't really expect to read it so soon after buying it, but I really wanted to, so I'm glad I got around to reading this one. And I really loved it. We were kind of reading 4 chapters a day and then everyone just ended up finishing it because we really couldn't put it down. This follows 2 Bengali girls, one of whom is really an overachiever at school and wants to be head girl, but she's not very popular at all, and the other who is really popular and has just come out as bi to her friends, and her friends kind of don't believe her because she's only ever dated guys. So they team up together to fake date for their own benefit and obviously end up kind of becoming friends and becoming closer throughout that. This one was just really nice and had some really nice representation of being Bengali and being Muslim, and I just really liked it. Really cute and fluffy, but also really interesting discussions on biphobia and racism, and yeah, there was some really hard-hitting stuff in here. It's such an important book. I loved it so much. I gave this one 4.5 stars out of 5. I then read Ghost of the Shadow Market by Cassandra Clare, Sarah Rees-Brenner, Maureen Johnson, Kelly Link and Robin Wasserman. This one again was quite an unplanned one. I didn't expect to read this in June, but it was one of the only audiobooks I had left to read and I really wanted to read it at some point. I've been told to read this before the Red Scrolls of Magic, so I decided to just finally start listening to it. It is a very chunky book and I'm glad I read it on audio because it was a lot less daunting, and it came across really well on audio because there was a whole cast of characters for this which I really liked. A lot of effort went into the production of that audiobook, so I would highly recommend listening to it. But this mainly follows Brother Zachariah, or Jem, from the Infernal Devices series throughout kind of journeying around the shadow markets of the world and the Shadowhunter world, but it also follows a lot of the side characters from all of the Shadowhunter books, which I really liked. So yeah, I loved this one. I loved being back in the Shadowhunter world so much. And I loved being around these characters a lot. It made me emotional, it made me nostalgic. I just really enjoyed all of these short stories. So I gave this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. I didn't necessarily read this one as part of Whatever-a-thon, but it obviously ended up being read in the same month. And then I read Show Us Who You Are by Elle McNichol, and I absolutely loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. This was brilliant. This follows Cora, who is neurodivergent. She has autism, and her new friend Adrian, who has ADHD. There is some kind of deep dark stuff going on in here. It's very kind of Scooby-Doo mystery-esque. Basically, Adrian's dad owns this company called the Pomegranate Institute, who turns people into holograms. The idea behind that being that when people die, they will still be able to be visited by their family in some capacity, and Cora ends up getting involved in this because they want to study somebody who is neurodivergent. They claim that's because they want to better get to know neurodivergent people so their holograms are more accurate. And a lot of stuff goes down. This was drama-filled. It was heavier than I expected being a middle grade, but I absolutely loved it. The representation was amazing. This is own voices. I would just highly recommend you go and read it. This is from the same author as A Kind of Spark, which has won the Children's Book Prize as of today. So massive congratulations to Elle McNichol for that. I haven't read A Kind of Spark yet, but I really want to now. I gave this one 5 stars. I just couldn't put it down. I absolutely loved it. And I did read this as part of my Whatever-a-thon. TBR, I read this one for an indie or self-published book because this is published by Night's Elf, who is a relatively small publisher. So I then read House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. I read this one because of a poll that I put up. One of the prompts for Whatever-a-thon was to create a poll. So I created a poll with 2 books that I'd bought recently and really wanted to read, and 2 books that had been on my TBR for a long time. And this one won. I picked this one up last month, I think, just when it came out because I had this signed copy, which is really nice. So I picked this one up thinking it sounded really cool. I did read Our Chemical Hearts years ago and I did enjoy it, but I didn't absolutely love it. And yeah, I decided to pick this one up, and it was voted for me to read as part of Whatever-a-thon. This one was a very mixed bag for me. It is a YA horror that was a mixture of thriller and horror. It is a YA horror thriller following three sisters who went missing when they were children for a month, and they randomly came back a month later on the same street that they went missing in. And then it follows them years and years later. Basically from that point on they were never the same and they don't remember what happened to them. And then nearer the start of this book, one of the sisters goes missing and the other two sisters find a note that says the other one remembers what happens to them. And there is a big mystery that ensues from there as they try and find out what happened to their missing sister. This one ended up being more fantasy and magical realist than I expected, and I really didn't enjoy those elements as much as I wanted to. It was kind of very dark, but yeah, I just wasn't drawn into this at all. I found that there wasn't really a motive explained behind a lot of this book, and I just found it quite slow and struggled to get into it. So yeah, I gave this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. So I then read Slay by Brittany Morris. We're getting into the books that I read on holiday now, and I picked this one up as a buddy read with Alex, which was really, really nice because we read it mostly in the same room together, which I loved. We read this one over a series of 3 days. We read about 100 pages a day. It is not the longest book in the world, and I absolutely love this. I've heard really good things about it before, and this lived up and exceeded all expectations. This follows Kira Johnson, who is our main character. She is a black girl and she created a video game called Slay that is for other black people. And I just absolutely love this book. There is so many important discussions in here about racism that come up authentically and naturally. And there's also a lot of conversations about feminism and standing up for yourself. And yeah, there's just so much in here, so much in here. And it just kept me absolutely hooked. I couldn't put this one down. There is kind of a mystery element to it as well. It's very fast paced. It is amazing. I loved this world that Kira Johnson had created in her game, and it just brought up a lot of opportunities for discussion as well. So I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. I read this one for author debut prompt for Whatever-a-thon, but I could have also read it for 5-star prediction, and I did end up rating it 5 stars. So I then read The Starlight, Watchmaker and The Deep Sea Duke, both by Lauren James. These are dyslexia-friendly books published by Barrington Stoke, who is a dyslexia-friendly publisher, and I really, really enjoy these books. This one was a reread for me. I read this one a couple of years ago, and then this one was released earlier this year, so I read it for the prompt of Hoard in the past year. I reread this one just because it's so quick and so short. I didn't realise that this was a sequel. But basically this follows some friends who live in a academy in space, and they basically all go to this elite academy, and this one follows our main character as a watchmaker at that academy, so he doesn't attend there, he works there. The other characters in there live there, but in this kind of world in space there are so many different characters. One of these is a rock climbing wall that develops into a hill and will eventually become her own continent and her own planet. But yeah, this is incredibly diverse. I loved the characters in here, loved the representation in here. They were so cute and absolutely so creative and imaginative. I just can't believe that Lauren James, how she does this, how she imagines these things. She is so creative. So yeah, I read this one for Hoard in the past year, reread this one just to get myself back into the world, and I rated both of these 4 out of 5 stars. I then read Punch in the Air by Ibi Zoboi and Youssef Salem, and I really enjoyed this one. This was a verse novel who is written by one of the authors is an author, and one of the authors is of the exonerated 5 who were wrongly imprisoned for the Central Park murder in 1989, I believe. So I really wanted to read this one because I knew it followed that story, and I knew it was inspired by that story. And I read this one as part of the Whatever-a-thon for the prompt mental health and disability rep. I found it really hard to pick a book for that because how do you know something has that kind of rep until you read it? But I asked my friend Courtney if this one would include mental health rep because she's read it before, and she said definitely it does kind of include those themes because obviously it is following somebody who is wrongly imprisoned. So yeah, this follows Amor, who is wrongly imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit, into a young offender's prison in America, and it was very hard-hitting, very emotional. I loved the verse. It was really, really beautifully written, and some of the illustrations in here are really nice as well. I just loved how this book was laid out, and it was a really, really quick read as well. My only complaint with this one is I didn't feel as tangibly connected to the characters as I wanted. didn't get that connection. Felt like things weren't as vivid as I wanted them to be in places, and for that reason I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. We're down to the last 3 books, guys, and I'm honestly flagging. This is a long video. But anyway, I then read XOXO by xoxo. I read this one as part of Whatever-a-thon for the prompt, something that has the same colour as your team's colour on the cover, which was blue. This one has a lot of blue, purple, pink tones in there, so I added this one. This is also a proof copy sent to me by Harper360, so thank you to Harper for sending me this one. So this one follows 2 characters who have a chance meeting in a karaoke bar. It is the main character's uncle's karaoke bar, I think, and then this guy walks in and they end up spending an evening together, and she never knows who he is, and then months later she goes to Korea to study and she finds out who he is and that he's at her school. He is a massive K-pop star, but she didn't know who he was at the time, and basically she tries to reconnect with him after the night that they had in New York. I think it was in New York. And I just really enjoyed this one, mainly because it was set in Korea, and I absolutely love books that are set in Asia, and especially like Japan and Korea. I really love books set over there, and I found this one, the food in here, the atmosphere, the surroundings, it was so vivid. I could really picture everything. I loved that. I also absolutely loved the relationship in here. Really shipped them, and I just wanted them to be okay, and I wanted them to get together, and I found this one made me really emotional. I really enjoyed it, and honestly I want to rate it 5 stars because I really loved it. I had a really good reading experience with this one. Loved the characters and read this one over a couple of days. Loved the setting. Loved the friendship groups. What's not to love? And then I read Cinderella is Dead by Kaylin Bayron, and I read this one as part of POC Rep, and this one's been on my shelves for a while because this was sent to me for Christmas, and I really enjoyed reading this one. Honestly, this was great. This is kind of a Cinderella retelling in a world where Cinderella existed 200 years ago, and everything they do is kind of inspired by her story, and kind of inspired by her story they have this ball every year in which all of the women go to this ball from the age of 18, I think, and they are picked by men to be married to them. This is a world in which women are very oppressed, and our main character, Sophia, who is gay, that is obviously very frowned upon in this fantasy world. She is trying to break out from this mold that they expect her to be in, and yeah, it's just following her story. I really liked it. It was a strong feminist characters in here, really liked the relationship. Really rooted for them. This was a super quick read as well, super fast paced, read it over a couple of days. I read like most of it in a day. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I'm going to give this one 4 out of 5 stars. And then last but not least, we have Cersei by Madeline Miller. I had very mixed feelings about this one. I read this one as part of Whatever-a-thon for the bookish creators favourite. This was Ashley from A Follow Through Fiction, one of her favourites, and was listed on one of the graphics for Whatever-a-thon for all of the host favourites. And I have very mixed feelings. I did rush this over a couple of days, and I don't know how much that kind of added to my feelings about this book. But again, kind of similar to Wuthering Heights, some of the scenes in this I found really vivid and I really loved, and some of the scenes I just completely zoned out and didn't really take anything in. And I don't know how much of that is due to the writing or how much of that is due to the style I read it in. I read big chunks of it at a time. But yeah, I did like the themes in this. I loved the strong female main character we had in Cersei and the independence that she had, but I did have a lot of mixed feelings, and I think maybe I do need to know a bit more about Greek mythology, and that may be part of the reason for it, because I really don't know a lot about Greek mythology. But yeah, just very mixed feelings. I think I'd like to reread this at some point, maybe a bit slower and once I know a bit more about Greek mythology. So I'm going to give this one 3 out of 5 stars. We made it. If you made it this far with me, thank you so much for watching this video. I know it has been a long one. I doubt there will ever be a wrap up as long as this again, because I have a lot of stuff going on. I probably won't be reading this much for a long time. I don't foresee myself reading this much in a month in the foreseeable future right now, but I'm very proud of what I managed to do in June. I'm very happy and grateful to the Whatever-a-thon hosted by Book Browsing Blog for allowing me to read so many books in a month. I've never read this many books in a month before, so yeah, thank you for persevering with me while I talked you through everything I read. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a like and comment down below. Tell me what you read in June, if you took part in Whatever You Want-a-thon, how many books you managed to read, and subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this. Bye guys!